All right. How are y'all doing today? Well, I'm doing okay, even though I'm in hell. That's where we are. Here in the video game that I play, I've made myself a little different here. This is my normal getup. My other one is a fashion wear that I can wear. And a lot of times fashion wear is just, something casual from different lands that you've gone to and so. But the spiked thing that you usually see me wear is from an adventure that you go through with Puent, and a long adventure that you go through when you're going 70 to 80, and the campaign that came along with it. But the pumpkin head comes from the Halloween event that they have. So anyhow, right now though, I have my normal headgear, my helmet, overridden by what's called Jarl's Gaze. Now in D&D land, there's a few different ways that you can look at this, but this is a pure sight, and so you can tell when somebody's evil or there's evil thoughts. This really does nothing much for you, but it does give you an advantage on your initiative rolls, and so that's really it. Or you can see things that are evil. You have a chance of it rolling versus your intelligence too, regardless. And wearing it and the effect of it gives you a +1 on your intelligence. So it's just kind of a helpful type of thing. So what we have here is pretty strange. And whenever I tell you that surrounding you is a lot of this ancient knowledge and ancient things that come together, here is an example. And of course, thrown at it is in one of the most iconic things that we can have today is the heaven and hell, and so on. Let's see if I can mention this. I've got another video that I've got coming out about it, but this one may preempt it. But hell, the goddess, Hel, hell, the place hell. Not really Hades, but it's that same thing, isn't it? And then Sheol and Gahenna, these places that we've heard about that are hell. And we talk about hell as being Christians, and isn't that kind of odd and strangely pagan, because hell is a goddess of the Celtic type people and the people of the Western Europe that they had from a long time ago. The whole idea of hell and idea of Hellenes comes from this. And it shows that there is a disconnect, although a shared mythology that has different people's names in different places, but they are the same people, as we've discussed it before, and it's the same passed down. And so it really shows that there's this thing that must have come before, that they all have this remnant of this similar tale from. And when I say from before, the ideal too that some of this iconography and some of these tales, such as swastikas and the flood and such, are even in the New World with Amerindians and the Incas and Mayas and stuff. So it dates way before that. And that's what I've been getting at here. I've been stretching back our boundaries, because if you're anything like what I was when I was young, and what my children have been and people get taught currently, versus what you might find out archaeologically and through somewhat divination of looking at different aspects and being able to put things together, you'll find that right in front of your face it's totally different. In fact, what is right in front of your face? Well, let's just look at some of this symbology and iconography here. I'm standing on these platforms, but these platforms are made of, just like the Causeway of the Giants and other places I've looked at, and the pillars that end up making up what is the Devil's Tower. And so for me, this rings true. And again, let me back out here a little bit. No. And it rings true to me because of Close Encounters of the Third Kind and things like that whenever I was a kid, and the Devil's Tower. And whenever I looked into it, they had this and it was like the Giant's Causeway. So I look into that, and oh man, so that's back in the homeland kind of thing. And That's weird, but hold on. There's a lot of them all over the place, and Ganam Padang and places like that in Angkor Wat that are made near these places. Now they have a primordial pyramid they have there, and they had only dated it just before BC. The thing's within 1000 BC. But no one ever dug down through the mounds to see what was going on. And much like the mounds in South America, those mounds had a mound below the other mound. And that mound, and they're not even at ground level, so it's like somebody made a tepe or a little hill and then put a mountain over it. Right? And people got buried way up at a top level, and they go, well, that's it. No, well, they dug into the second level, down deep enough to go into the third, and they're getting dates that are over 20,000 years old, as I've stated in a couple of my other videos. But let's go back to this symbology here. I ended up coming from right over there. See my little white dot right above my head where I'm looking? I came from over there. We teleported in after the second boss. This is a common dungeon effect where there's 3 bosses. The end one's the main one. He's toughest. We just got through with it here in hell. And it ended up being a hellfire engine. It's a weird construction thing that worked off of steam and stuff, and it's an automated thing to kill us. We weren't fighting orcas or anything this time. That was in other different aspects. We've already fought in other places, and I can show you pieces of that. I don't know how interested y'all will be in all of this, and if I keep rambling and stuff, you probably won't be, but we came in from there and ran down there, and I don't know if you see the little staircase right above the dot there, and ran up through there, all the way through the background of this, and had to go through this giant castle and its ways coming through here. Now this is actually the 9th layer of hell that we're in here, or actually in reality this would be the 7th layer of hell because 2 are omitted, and this is a as above so below situation. And this hierarchy of hell and Hades that they have, and people had figured out, you know, with the archdemons and everything, and it really is just a mirrored aspect of saints and everything that went along with the Bible, but a bad person in the same situation whenever they've done this. I'll do a whole video where I'll show how that's picked apart, and if this person is that, well, that person is this. This person does this good thing, this person does this bad thing, to the same thing. This is yin, this is yang, here we go. So anyhow, some of these lights are on up in here to give it a little bit of effect. You can see these chevrons that are in the building here that help out with things. But so this Giant's Causeway, if you look, that's really a hexagram, right? And whenever you play a D&D, you have 10-sided dice and 20-sided dice and stuff, and that's built out of these geometric symbols that go way, way back. You can find them on papers and other things, and they don't know what it relates to, and oh, duh, and stuff way back. And the Library of Alexandria would have been full of it. But a lot of people don't know there's a library like the Library of Alexandria that they had up near Athens at the time. And damn, the name escapes me right now. But it said it rivaled it, you know, somewhat, and that Alexandria had been somewhat exaggerated on how many they had. And sure, they might have had over 1 million scrolls, but how many of them are copies and all these type of things, right? And they couldn't really have permanent type stuff. The instantly you find out scrolls come and go. In fact, in D&D land, a lot of time the DMs will play with special scrolls that you may get for certain purposes, and when you read the scroll, whoosh, it burns up and it's gone. Or the words disappear and it's now a blank piece of parchment. It's no longer itchy, it's been used, right? So some of the symbology of things. So we're looking at hexagons here, but then there's a pentagon in the middle of this that would be below all those hill of skulls, if you will. And looking at it from this angle, that's an evil thing that you'd be thinking of. And surely this looks to be some satanic ritual and everything, and all the writing around it. And you see how it looks like cuneiform, early demotic type writing that goes around it. It's swirling in a clockwise situation, by the way. There are 5 points here. This relates to the 5 different planets that we have. So the 5 celestial bodies that are working on the one. There's a lot of esotericness to this, and if you'll look real closely, there's a star behind the star because there's points in between each one. But this is a symbology that goes a lot of time with witches and witchcraft. But would you believe that even though this has skulls going around it with a candle, with some bones that are in it somehow, this is supposed to be a symbol of rebirth. This is supposed to have been a ceremony, a type of rebirth. And people talk about, well, then that's the undead, right? You brought somebody back from the dead, you did a Lazarus type thing, so that's bad. The hell, that's bad. Hell. So let's look at this thing, this place here. Let me get right over to the edge, and you can look. This is just floating up in nowhere, and it's kind of latched onto it. And I'm just floating here on this giant clog of it. Now, that ruby type thing is one of their essential elements that's a phylactery of all this power that they utilize for this. But that's like a ruby, if you will, in reality. A carbuncle, ruby, whatever, and we're actually upside down. Let me flip your brain here for a second. So you know how you can go down on the underside of the world, and when you go on the underside of the world, you're actually facing down. I mean, your feet are up this way here, and you're the opposite. I wish I could flip the screen right now, but that's the way you would be, and you can walk all the way around. You'll be back up like this. So up is really just pointing straight up from where you are. So hell is upside down, held below. And so it's kind of like the center of Earth. And gravity now is working different in this situation, where gravity is trying to take that ruby up to the crust. And so way up here in the sky, there's the crust and mantle and all the magma, and it's trying to reach up too, and somewhere we're held below it. Now the biblical model said that we're a flat Earth. And I don't want to even get into it, but it said that we're held up on 4 pillars and stuff, whereas this is suspended below it. Imagine if you built a model of the world up on 4 pillars, and then down below it you were to suspend off of chains a little crucible that you put a fire in, right? You might use 3 or 4 chains to do that. And even though a pyramid is really a 3-sided triangle thing, there are actually 4 sides to it, and there would be 4 chains that make it up, just like what we're looking at. And there's a pyramid, and pier is fire, and mid is the middle, and so it's fire in the center. It's what it is speaking of. But there's so much more of this place. Now, I just fought this guy. And this is a fire that we get healed at before we go to attack him and stuff. And there's where we go to attack him. When you queue up at that door, and when you start in there, there's a fight. So I'll go into that in a second. And all this different iconographies around here. Let's see if I can zoom in. Yeah, a little bit. If you look, here's like a rope type looking Celtic cross situation. And right up here, if I was to get right in the center of that, the bigger piece, where it's kind of an oval, you know, and stuff. Well, in the center of that is a cross. But if I took that out, it is 2 things attached together. And if I look at this spot right here, it's a conjoining of a knot, a series of knots. But would you believe it that this reminds me of grandma's old lace? For there are patterns that you pull out of old lace that actually used to have meanings too. For fabrics and kipu. People used to keep track of knowledge with a string with certain knots in it, and doubled and triple knots, left-handed, right-handed knots, all kinds of things. It's amazing. Here's a symbology that looks somewhat like a lotus flower. But let's go into here. I can't go back up now. Here's where we came out and hopped down onto it. And we had to kill all the guys up there before this appeared and came up and shing, you know, and then we all got to hop our way down across and into here, and we can't hop back up. Tell you about this real quick. Inside of here was that Hellfire engine. He's as big as one of these squares, and he's going around attacking you, and you had to have a tank with you that was drawing his aggro and attacking him. But see how there's magma below each one, but there would be a burp up in certain spots, and it would burn it, and that would make it burnt. Well, if it got burnt twice, it would become magma charred, and if you stepped on it, you would die. It acted like you fell through it, or you just got singed, so you know you could make it. You didn't want to stand on here when things goes blowing up and so on. I've got a lot of hit points, but at the same time, and he runs around on here. So also red spots show up on you every once in a while, and then after a while it makes a blow up on you. So what you have to do is go place the red dot, wait for a couple of seconds, and it locks in, and then get off of it real quick, and it makes that spot, if you're solo, turn into a charred one. If you're more than one person do it, or i.e. you put two on top of that or more, it ends up being a magma one. So you have to utilize that and save as much space as possible as you're fighting this guy down, even though as built up as we are. So after you beat him up, there's usually a little drop that was in here. There was a drop, a ruby, and one of the little slip things. I got the ruby, somebody else got the little slip things, and no big deal. But there's two chests here, and what I thought about waiting for is the other chest here, because I can't make a key, and I only had to wait 35 minutes, 40 minutes to make a key. So I thought, well, hell, and I started looking around, and all of a sudden all this symbology came to me, and I started thinking so many thoughts and everything off of it. Now you can see the rosettes that's there, but if you look at the rosette closely, it has a up and down cross and then an X built into it too, right? You see that if I get up like that, the rosette that's right there. And then open centers. This is somewhat like a sunflower, but a lot of sunflowers have that symmetry. Well, that symmetry is built out of geometry, and a sacred geometry. And somebody a long time ago figured out that space has the same geometry, and that everything around us, from the smallest that we could detect to that point to the biggest, had the same geometry. And that gave us the ideas of certain things. Now here we see some, again, polygonal stonework or whatever, but this has been done flattened as opposed to being odd shaped. But it is perfect in the in-betweens, but the side walls are left to look a little bit rough. They could have polished them just as good as they did the top and bottom and sides, but they don't do it. Much like those pillow ones and so on that they have. No knobs though, no knobs around on any of it. There's the archway. We'll talk about an arch in a second. It has to do with that thing we were looking at before out there with the knots that are on it. Well, it's on the wall right here with the knot, and you can see that symbol and how it comes into a knot, and then there's that looping in the center of it. Well, while I was standing here looking at this, I realized that I was standing on something in the first place. Now, what's happened is we've had something attack us, and it is a black hole sun situation. Yeah, and I'm not going to leave it on there too long because it's kind of weird, but you can see the lightning coming off of it and things too. Now, black hole sun relating to something like this is kind of odd. So you would think, well, that's an eclipse, right? And of course, eclipse used to be signs of gloom and doom, so this goes along with it real well. But what goes along with it better is that this is the hidden sun, the black hole sun. So there's two esoteric things I could tell you about this right now. Let's just go with both of them. We'll start off with the first for what this may look like. You can see it swallowing in smoke, but we can't see where it's going. So it looks like a black hole situation. In fact, you can see little gleams going towards the center in places, and that just disappears. So it's like a black hole that's there. But black holes are like made out of giant suns and turned to small. If the sun we have now turned into a black hole, it would end up being much smaller than our moon, but it would have the same gravity. Boy, it'd just suck you to it like a magnet. But you'd crumple into its skin, and as it built up and built up and built up, and eventually it would do a type of ignition that the sun does as it builds up and ignites. and it would become super gravitated and get to a certain point. Anyhow, not to get into that, but our sun, and I can find this in early writings too, that they understood this situation. And I remember being a little kid and seeing sunspots and how the sun is really black. And the Sumerians talked about the sun is like a torch on fire. And you can see this in a few other people. They have the same symbology of fire with it and everything, the sun and, Mithraism and so on. It all goes with this fire. And that's because the sun is created off of fire, but it is a black sun that is on fire, because if you blow out that torch, it's black. And the power of that gives off whenever you ignite it. Boom. Much like the power of the soil of the Nile that's black and rich grows the crops up out of it and so on. And that gives a sign of rebirth too. But then there's, day and then night. So at night, do we have two suns? Is this somehow like Tatooine? Well, I'm going to go to a deal and show you something about Tatooine, and hopefully we can put all these together. Some of this other symbology I've shown you recently about swastikas and so on. But the hidden sun is actually something a little bit different. The hidden sun, in most esoteric circles, has to do with Saturn and its 12-year cycle that it goes around the ecliptic and goes through the signs of the zodiac. This right here is a portal to leave. It shows up after you get your stuff. So see how it says I can leave now if I want to. It gets real bright if you get away from it. It gets not as bright as you get close, but you can see the ruins of the city from over there. Everything that's in hell. But let me get out on this edge here, and you can see there's a chain, hopefully, that runs right down the side of that. Now whenever we fought this in our D&D campaign thing, we ended up having chains and had to come across the back way. So this is where we came from, and it was attached to stuff that was back there that we had to fight some stuff and go across. Looks like there's a dragon there, but it's not moving. Right there at that point. A bat wing thing. But other stuff was floating out here across, and we came that way because we could not, and so, okay, so you've got it all set up. We had to do it, and we had to climb this chain up the back way, which is pretty neat too, right? Anyhow, so what I was standing here on, and I just looked down at, which triggered me to do this whole video. This is just my little partner here, Roosevelt. And, so what you see here is each one of these tiles, like I'm standing on one now, standing on a tile. So looking at the one left of me right there, you'll see that it's a little flowerish kind of shape. It's a 4 pointed type thing. But inside of each one, there is a 8-spoke wheel. So this is that wheel in the sky. This is an ancient symbol of the sun. It's either a star or a symbol like this. If you take the circle off of this is Din gear of the Sumerians, and other people show this, and a star and a god, and the people, the leader was turned into a god. Trump is not just a king, he's a god. The Egyptians were gods. Caesar was a god. They were all made into it. The idea of the second coming of Christ was Titus, who was in Caesar's place again, trying to give the next dynasty of the Flavians and continue it on. But it destroyed. That's a total different thing. But esoteric, while looking at this is that in India and all around the world, a symbol for that. But you'll notice that inside of each little deal they have here, they have a clover. 1, 2, 3, 4 clovers in each one. And you think, well, if this is 4 seasons, then there would be not a clover in one, at least 2 of them, if, clover is really spring, maybe summertime, but then fall, nah, and winter, hell no. But maybe there's something bigger. Maybe there's something bigger at play, because if you look where they attach to the next tile that's above or beside it, there's this double clover. It's really one of clovers is butted up to the other. Each of these clovers is a three-pronged entity, like a trident, but rounded off like a flower, like a poppy in its leaves. And so if you look at the bigger picture, what we've been looking at here with its symbol that's here with its dill is actually a Vesica Pisces. It's running this way, and when it's running this way, right? And if we were to take and look at that as sacred geometry and how that's found by taking two circles and putting it together. Let me zoom way out here. And so we were looking at this little guy here, but you can see this bigger circle that's right here that I'm kind of tracing around. And then there's another big circle that's right here that I'm tracing around. And where they meet is that crossing. And that's the sacred feminine. But you can see many crossings that are in here. But now interwoven like a web, you can see intelligence writing in symbology if you know how to read it. And so again, something that's in my face is Charlotte's Web, where she has a web and it doesn't take much. Well, there's just some symbols in gobbledygook. Symbols in gobbledygook mean a whole lot. That's the reason when I was a kid, I really wanted them to track down the symbology that supposedly was on Roswell and stuff, because you could track that down to perhaps mean something. Of course, if it's alien lingo, blah. But then I guess the implication there was, where did we get the symbols from? And do we have the same meaning? And has some of our meanings deviated, over time? Like an infant trying to remember later what your parents said, and it was a little bit different. Anyhow, so like I say, it's all around you all the time. But inside this giant circle here, we have this, well, that's the flower of life that's put inside there, and the wheel in the sky. And if we look at it, there are many, many wheels in the sky that go and come out of it. If I was able to zoom way out of it, it starts to become just kind of a crocheted object that would be one object, and it would just look like it had scribbling inside of it. And if I zoomed out much further, it would just have this symbol kind of design in it that would look like overlapping rings, and really the strong points here would be the wheels and dots. It's kind of interesting how stuff like this is in your face. And sure, it's a D&D game, so they've tried to da-da-da and everything. Well, I've noticed a long time ago into this game that people get into it, or into this esoteric type of thing, and they utilize it in the game, and somewhat correctly, in so many ways. If you'll look, this treasure chest right here has double eagles or birds' heads coming out the side of it. Griffins, if you will, but actually they're buzzards. And then on the side is a dragon, and if you look, there's poles put through the side of it. And this is carried like the Ark of the Covenant, which I can do a whole video on that and its relations in ancient Egypt and the idea and the concept of it. And that there's really only two places the Bible mentions an ark in any way, and that's when Noah is kept in a capsule, and then something else sacred is kept in a capsule. I can't go through. Ooh, let me see if I can make a key now. It's been, go to my campaign. Yes. So it's building up my bar. It takes 10 seconds for it to do it, and it'll give me a key. Ta-da! Let's see if I can get anything. I even got some re-rolls here. Prize bracers. I've got so much better on me. see what else I got. That's a reroll. Enchanting stone. I've still got a bunch of those. I'm trying to get this one piece of 1025 gear that you only get out of this. That's 909. Siege engine. That's the other part of the artifact, and I've already gotten the belt. This is the neck piece, and so I'm going to accept that because now I'm starting to get the set for it. Yep, in fact, there's my collection increased onto it. So whenever you, let me look at my character here. Whenever you have something like that, it's like an artifact neck and an artifact waist piece, and then you'll have one piece of artifact that goes with it that enchants, makes both of them work. And this gives you extra damage and lets you do certain artifacts, a debuff, all kinds of neat stuff, and different ones of them. And this one is being prized. I don't think it does as much damage as the one that I have, but its gear score is a little bit higher. And it seems to be geared towards tanks and pallies somewhat. So whenever you're a tank and pally, which I'm not, I have a tank and a pally, but short of selling it for 100,000 AD, I don't know, maybe I'll just keep it. Well, one of the pieces I know is 1 million. The other one's a couple 100,000, like 200,000 for that, but 1 million for the other piece that I already got. And now I have the availability of having the piece or having the set, or I could just chunk it away. So anyhow, and there was our score and all of our stuff off of it, but still some ruins in there and everything, and diamond patterns. And here we have a floor that's built in that strange style where they're all different sizes put together, but it's geometric shapes too, breaking stuff up like little bitty plots of land like the Sumerians had to do. And that's what gave them the idea and trigonometry, and how you could square something off, and how you could square a circle, and how you had a certain outer area of land that you could pull off the square and work off that. One has to be the actual standpoint though. Like where I'm standing at this corner is the standpoint. This block is square. This is a certain size. Everybody goes off of it. And so on, right? Or it just never works. Anyhow, kind of neat here. We've got over 30 minutes into a video. I'm sure there's a couple other things I was going to tell you about. But yeah, see that little hanging brazier? It's right there. So that's what hell is like. But hell is hanging under the bottom of the world. See it right there? And so we're upside down. And so right now I'm upside down, but I'm still sticking to it. And if I jump off, I do fall that way. I don't fall up. You'd think you'd fall up. That's probably what they ought to do, make you start falling up and then you die. But anyhow, kind of neat, huh? So, what else? Anything else? It's just an interim here so you can't get through. Even if you know tricks of ways to try to get through. But yeah, that's a little Romanesque. But black hole sun. Another aspect I never gave you on that is that because it has to do with Saturn, it's your sun at nighttime. Because it is doing a 12-year cycle, and 12 is so sacred. There's 12 disciples, there's 12 houses of the zodiac, there's 12 hours in a day, Horus in a day, and it all works together. And he's the secret guy that nobody knows about at night. And if you point him out to people, he's going to slowly move away from there and won't be there anymore. But if you're looking at him, he ain't moving. Yeah, he is moving, but real slowly, casually through the clouds, way up in heaven, moving through the zodiac in the background procession of the great year. It takes just short of 29,000 years to go through. And the ancients knew this. One of the things that the Sumerians said is that all the stars we see at night is like our sun, but as a torch as it is, far, far in the distance. And you know that every star we're seeing is actually just the sun, and there are planets around those, and we know there's planets like crazy nowadays. So it's amazing what these people prophesied, kind of came up with, and ends up later showing to be true. But in the middle, isn't that weird? And weren't we told when we were a kid that the world was flat and you would fall off the end of it? All of these ideas, they come because people got entrenched into that Bible and read things as a literal way that it was written and not what it was meant to say. For the four pillars that hold up the word, Atlas hold up the sky, and so on. That same situation, Bahamut and its skeleton held up the sky from Marduk. But that's a later recreation on the concept of Tiamat and Bahamut. And I've shown you Tiamat and Bahamut here in this game, where Bahamut is a giant dragon and Tiamat is a 5-headed dragon that has one head of each different kind that does each different weapon. And there's reason for that too. And 5 is so symbolic, and these numbers go with things. They work well. And even letters used to be numbers. So you wonder why a G is the number on a Masonic ring, and they say, well, that means God or greater power and stuff. But in reality, it still means 7, because G is the 7th letter, and our alphabet's been put away in a certain reason, and it means things. It's the same reason that chevron right there, if you look at it, it's just a compass. It's just a compass like this that you use. God twists his compass around the world, and that's a maritime thing. And people didn't know about boats and everything. Oh, really? What else didn't they know about? Or better yet, what else did they know about? So I'm going to close it off here, guys. I just thought I'd do this as a side one here. But yeah, I'm in hell with a black hole sun. And there's a lot of symbology to go with that. But, and hell. And where hell actually comes from, and that it's not the Bible. And how does that all work? Well, I'll get into that too shortly. Same bat time, same bat channel. Peace. Take care.